sometimes it's rough, and it takes all that you've got, but he's been here, just waiting for you to knock, to take his hand, and plant your feet on the rock. I want to live my life on the rock. I want to live my life on the rock. I want to live my life on the rock. I want to live my life on the rock. I want to live my life on the rock. I want to live my life on the rock.
Hi, welcome to Life on the Rock. Tonight our guests are Jeanette De Melo and Peter Jesserer Smith from the National Catholic Register. We're going to talk about the news, Catholic presence in the news, and the latest things going on at the Register. So it should be a great show.
Yeah.
And we hope to inspire young people to get out there in the media world. You know, these are good occupations to have, very much needed today. We need a Catholic presence there, reporting on issues and things. So.
Speaking Spanish.
That's very good, Doug. Very good. Tomorrow is the Feast of St. Francis.
Yes, it is.
Mother Angelica is our foundress. We are the Franciscan missionaries of the Eternal Word, and we follow the spirit of the rule of St. Francis. And we wear the brown habit, the white cord here, representing the vows, the knots on the cord, and he's our inspiration, and very much needed today. We know our Holy Father took the name Francis to be a man of peace, to be a man who would care for the poor, and certainly is all that, and a man of humility, I think we could say about our Holy Father. So that spirit is much needed in the world today, a spirit of peace, a spirit of discipleship. You know, that's one thing that's always inspired me about St. Francis. He was completely committed to the Lord. You know, he read it in the gospel, and he said, let's do that. You know, he's a very literal guy. You know, he read about Jesus sending out the apostles and disciples 2 by 2 and how they were to take nothing for the journey. And that's what he took as his rule of life, you know, that kind of simplicity and poverty and service. And a great evangelist. I know you respect his...
Oh, he was a ball of fire. You know, they say he loved to go off to the mountains and just contemplate, meditate, pray deeply. But when he got up in front of a crowd to preach or got into that mode of preaching, they said he just, you know, came alive. You know, real open to the Spirit of God working through him. You know, and really, I mean, drew so many people in. There's a great story about one day when all the Franciscans had gotten together for a gathering, a conference, and there were hundreds of them there. And one of the Franciscans was blessed to see and communicate with his guardian angel. And this is a story told by St. John Vianney in one of his writings, by the way. St. John Vianney talks about this, and that this particular brother was able to see and communicate with his guardian angel. And he said, I want you to look over there off in the field. And off in the field were 18,000 demons. 18,000 demons off to the side of these hundreds of Franciscans. And they were plotting and planning, and he could hear them talk. John Vianney writes how one of the demons says, complaining, we can't get to them very well. We can't get to these Franciscans very well because of their prayer life, their fasting, making a gift of themselves, mortification, fasting, and because of the leadership of that one, Francis. Powerful, powerful. And then a little while later, the brother is walking into a nearby town, and the guardian angel points out one demon sitting outside the gate of this town. He says, this demon is here to tempt everybody in this town. The brother thought and asked, one demon here for an entire town doing really nothing, 18,000 demons out here working on tempting the Franciscan order. What gives? Probably didn't put it in those words, but what is it about this? He says, well, the people in the town are already in the net. This demon is here just to kind of keep the status quo, keep it going, right? But the Franciscans are working. They're working for the Lord. They're in the vineyard. They're out there evangelizing. They're stirring things up. They're shaking up the net, and they're upsetting the enemy. Anytime we do this, you know, as John Vianney was pointing out, the more the devil targets us because we're trying to bear witness to Christ and follow his commandments. And the more we want to follow his commandments, St. Francis did. He followed the Word of God, and that's in Revelation 12. The devil goes off to wage war against the offspring of Our Lady, those who bear witness to Christ and follow the commandments of God. So you see that played out very clearly in that story with the Franciscans. That's powerful. That really moved me when I first read that. And I did take him as my patron saint, St. Francis. He and I are a lot alike. We're both very calm and peaceful and very subdued. And not entirely true.
Yeah, there's a beautiful statue of of St. Francis and some of the early Franciscans who traveled with him to Rome to go see the Pope, who at the time was at St. John Lateran. And it's outside of the Basilica, and it's bigger than life size. It's this huge statue. And the Pope at the time had a vision of this poor man, that St. John Lateran was crumbling, right? And he puts, this poor man comes up and puts his shoulder underneath the crumbling edifice to hold it up. And it's a powerful message, because St. Francis was told from the beautiful cross, San Damiano, to go and rebuild my church. And he took it literally, started rebuilding churches.
He started collecting stones from people to rebuild the churches.
Begging for stones, right? But the deeper message was that he was going to lead a movement to rebuild and to renew the church, drawing close to Jesus' words in the scriptures, what he told us to do, to live a simple life, to be humble, and as you pointed out, to be a man of prayer. So the message is, if you want to renew the church, rebuild the church, it comes through holiness, right? It comes through discipleship and simplicity and being a man of peace. And these are things that are very important and we need to recultivate today in our lives.
And,
right?
it's not just for the Franciscans or any religious order, it's for all of us. I mean, as a layman, my job is to be a man of prayer, a man of fasting, penance, sacrifice, make a gift of myself, especially for my wife and my children and anybody else that God entrusts in my care and my path. And that's how we all contribute. It's easy to look at the priest and say, well, look, you've donned the habit, therefore that's your job. But, I can still have myself firmly entrenched and planted in the world. And that's okay, but for you it's different. And it's really not the case. I mean, it plays out differently, of course, but I still have to be a servant. I still have to be a sacrificial gift in the spirit of St. Francis. And the rebuilding of the church goes on still today through the Franciscan order, through Pope Francis now. So his spirit, what God did through St. Francis, is still active in the world today.
And that's a great point about the laity too, because he started the third order made up of lay people. So that was very much part of the Franciscan movement, is today. But very much so, you are to take these gospel values into your life as lay people and transform culture, transform society by a spirit of the gospel, not a spirit of the world. So we're going to take a short break. We'll be back with Jeanette De Melo and Peter Jesserer Smith talking about the Register and their work there. So don't go away. Back in a moment. Welcome back. You're watching Life on the Rock with Jeanette De Melo and Peter Jesserer Smith. Welcome, Jeanette.
Thank you.
You've been on the show before. We've had you different, well, certainly in Rio.
In Rio for World Youth Day, that's right.
And Peter, welcome.
Father, thank you so much.
And Jeanette, I thought we'd start with, you could set up the Register and tell our National Catholic Register, you could tell us some of the facts and figures about your work there.
Absolutely. Well, the Register's been around since 1927, so it's an old paper. It was started in Denver first as the Denver Catholic Register. It developed to become the National Catholic Register, and at one point in time it was throughout the country. It served kind of as a diocesan paper, so it had a national element to it, and then it had local element to it, and some papers like the Lincoln Register and others still exist. They're not a part of the National Catholic Register. But obviously EWTN has owned the Register for 3 years. These have been great 3 years where many newspapers are declining in circulation. The Register is increasing in its circulation, which is really wonderful. I think it's 65% of an increase that we've seen in our subscription base since EWTN has acquired the Register. So that's great news.
And you have a wonderful website.
Yeah, so a great part of our news is on the website. So let's say if we do 30 stories in each print edition, which is 26 times a year, we have twice as much on the website. And then you have blogs on top of that. The website gets about 6 million unique visits. So that's unique views by a unique person
Yeah.
a year. So 6 million annual unique views. So that's a great number, and we of course want to increase that. Mobile traffic is up. We're working on a new mobile site. So I'm very, very pleased with the growth of the Register over these years.
And you have an email kind of blast you send out?
That's right. We have a daily email update, and we invite people to sign up on ncregister.com for that daily email update. It's where you get basically the top news of the day. You get about 5 or 6 links to stories with headlines and a brief blurb about that story.
Right.
So.
And a really action-packed blog site.
That's right.
Keeps you busy as editor.
It keeps me very busy. It keeps me very busy. You know, our bloggers are not staff writers. They are contract writers. They're freelance writers, and most of them have been with us for a while, and they definitely keep us on our toes. But part of that is because blogs are intended to be oftentimes a first response to news, or first response to ideas circulating on the web and that kind of thing. They're a mixture of opinion and some reporting, but they're not held to the same kinds of standards as print or as journalistic stories.
Right. And I think about the line Pope Francis has used several times about he'd rather have a church that's out there mixing it up, but maybe makes a few mistakes or stumbles at times. But
the blogs are great for that, because they really do meet people where they are, and a lot of times some of our writers will take conversations they've had with readers, and they'll take that and they'll make it a blog post, and then ask for readers' feedback and that kind of thing. So the comment box on the blog is really an amazing place.
They're hilarious. I'm amazed people's giftedness in writing witty, like one-liners and stuff there.
Yeah, and sometimes very long posts there that should be their own blog. But but in reality, we see the comment box as a real place to engage.
Yeah. Now, Peter, you are a young man, 28 years old.
Yes.
And you are a full-time writer, right?
Yes, I'm the National Catholic Register's Washington, D.C. correspondent.
Okay. And tell us a little bit about your background. Where did you go to college?
Well, I'm a graduate of Christendom College. I graduated with the class of 2009. During that time, I got interested in the news because, well, a number of reasons actually. A friend of mine his father would send him all these news clippings, and he never had time to read all of them, but he wanted me to read them and then report back to him so he could tell his dad what was in them. And anyway, the great thing was that I was getting all this information, and I thought, there's so much here that the students at college should know about. And I felt that as Catholics at Christendom, we're supposed to restore all things in Christ. The way we restore all things in Christ is actually know what's going on in our world. So I had an idea to start a newspaper. I gathered together a team of people, and then another friend of mine also had the same idea to start a newspaper. And so he got the name. It was The Rambler, and he got the money for it, and I brought on the news team. And he brought in people to do arts and culture, faith and reason. It was a great little paper, and it was a great little project. So that's
how it still exists.
And it's still going strong at Christendom. It's forming a lot of great Catholics in journalism, in mainstream journalism, as well as Catholic journalism. A friend of mine, Beckett Adams, at the Washington Examiner, he wrote for us for a little bit. But that's some of the great work that's coming out of there.
Right. So you got a philosophy degree from Christendom.
Yes.
And then you did some more studies for journalism. Tell us about that.
Well, I got a bachelor's in philosophy, and it was great from Christendom because it gave me a very holistic view of the world. I think that's what a Catholic journalist has to do, is that a Catholic journalist has to try to look from the eyes and perspective of the Church and see how all these things integrate with each other. And Christendom gave me an excellent education for that. But I took that, I gained, cut my
teeth?
Cut my teeth, yes. I cut my teeth working as a reporter for LifeSite News for a little bit. And then in 2011, I wanted to move on, broaden my horizons, gain new experiences, and I took an internship with the National Journalism Center, which was a fantastic opportunity. I really recommend for a lot of young Catholics interested in learning about the news. NJC is an excellent program because they actually give you a real newsroom experience, which I think is key to journalism. You have to have a background, look at the world, but you need practical experience. Right. So I got that, did the internship, gained great experience, and then a number of projects over the years, and then finally decided that my vocation was in Catholic journalism. So I started freelancing, and then Jeanette asked me to write for the National Catholic Register, and
here you are.
Here I am.
So you were a freelancer first, and then Jeanette, you saw something in his writing. What was the quality you liked?
Well, I enjoyed Peter's eagerness and enthusiasm. He was definitely not afraid to go out and get a story. He aspires, he aspired then, aspires now to be a great Catholic journalist. He wants to be the best, and that vision and that inspiration to be the best Catholic journalist that he could be was very appealing to me. But I especially liked how he was a go-getter. Like, he was not afraid to get a story and write about it. He learned a lot as he began to delve into new topics that he hadn't covered before, and he told me about that. He's like, I covered this topic and I learned a lot about this, whether it be marriage, whether it be immigration, whether it be divorce in the church, and it was nice to get the feedback that in covering a story, he actually learned something and was able to share that with our writers.
That's the great thing about journalism. You're always learning.
Yeah. And you have a great trip coming up to Lebanon. Tell us about that.
Yes. Well, this is going to be my second trip out to the Middle East. My first trip was earlier this year. I went to Israel, where I covered the Pope's visit in part, but also got to see a lot of the country. This time, however, I'm going to Lebanon and Jordan as part of Catholic Relief Services Egan Fellowship. And what we're going to be doing over there is getting a first-hand look at the Syrian refugee crisis, visiting refugee camps.
Wow. And when you were in Israel, you met some Palestinian youth. What was some of your, I remember we were talking about it before, and you said you were really struck by the complexity of the situation that they're in. And
it is a complex situation, and it's not a situation that is easily understood looking at it from the outside in American media. These Palestinian Christians actually are Israeli citizens. They live in Jerusalem, but they identify as Palestinians because of their shared Arab heritage with their fellow Christian Arabs who live in the West Bank, and some of whom do live in Gaza. But they just said, they pointed out that the issues with Israel and Palestine are complex, and they had a great sensitivity and thoughtfulness about it. And one of them said, I think we have to go for a two-state solution. One of them said, I think actually a one-state solution is better. But the key thing that struck with me was that they were very committed to peaceful, nonviolent means of solving the issues between the Israelis and the Palestinians. And they even mentioned that they have Israelis, Jewish friends of theirs, who are committed to the same thing. So the sense that you get is actually, if there's hope for peace in the region, it is going to come from the youth.
Right.
You know, I'd like to jump in there because we had another reporter who's there in Israel, Michelle Shaban. She writes for us regularly, a correspondent who lives there. And she told us basically the same thing, that, you know, when the crisis in Gaza happened just this summer, when you looked at who was providing aid in these, you know, makeshift camps that would help provide aid to the people there, it was everyone. It wasn't just one, you know, it wasn't just Palestinians, it was Israelis, it was both who were really providing the aid. And she made that point, that they really want peace. It's a lot of the extremes that we tend to see all the time. So
Yes.
it's important for us to help provide that coverage.
Right. We're going to take a short break. We'll be back with Peter and Jeanette, so don't go away. Back in a moment. Welcome back. I forgot to mention Jeanette is the editor-in-chief of the Register.
It's a big title, but you know,
I asked her if she smokes cigars. She said she doesn't.
Chocolate. Chocolate is my vice.
What do you hope to bring people through the Register, the Catholic perspective? In the
Well, you
news?
know, the Register's mission, I mean, as a mission statement, would be that we participate in the new evangelization by pointing out, by talking about the news at the cross-section of faith and culture. And we analyze that news from a Catholic perspective, and we give it to our readers, and we hope that those readers will engage. They'll engage in the secular culture, they'll engage in the church in an informed way, because we were able to inform them from a Catholic perspective on the news of the day. But you know, what I really love to give is good news about the church. What I love to give is to talk about what's going on in the church, whether it be about new vocations. And yeah, there's somewhat of a vocations crisis, but there's a great movement of new vocations that we should highlight. And there's also saints that we should highlight, and there's a new saint coming to the U.S.
So she's got some news for
us. This is exciting. Not many people have heard about this, and I, you know, just recently read about Saint Miriam Teresa. She is going to be beatified October 4th here in the U.S. This is happening on U.S. soil in Newark, New Jersey. It's the first time that anyone has been beatified on the U.S. Soil. I don't know if the headline is going to be this, but I was thinking about "Made Blessed in the USA" as a headline. But it's really a wonderful story. She was, I think, 26 years old when she died. She was a Sister of Charity. And she was a very, very smart woman, was salutatorian of her class. She is often called the American Saint Therese of Lisieux. She had a very similar history as the Little Flower. And anyway, this is just a wonderful saint that the Register is writing about. Father Roger Landry has written a commentary for us about her. And anyway, this is the kind of stuff I get excited about. I get excited to tell our readers, to share with your audience about new saints like this that can inspire us.
Jeanette, why do you think that that's so important to tell the world about things like new saints? Just your take on this.
Because
why is it necessary? Why is it meaningful? What kind of impact does it have on, you know, just the human psyche, human nature, I mean, all that?
Because of what's on your shirt. You know, what is on your shirt there is a symbol, the Nazarene. It's basically, you know, that we are Christians, and it represents that we are being persecuted in parts of the world. And that's serious, and that's sad news, but there are things to highlight, things to enjoy about being Catholic. There are things that we must lift up because our world needs hope.
Yeah.
And people
reminds us of the bigger picture, the bigger family.
Absolutely.
Yeah. If I could just interject a little bit, I think the important thing about good news stories is that they remind us about reality. That, I mean, St. Paul says, you know, where sin abounds, grace abounds all the more. And I figured as a journalist, well, sin is kind of behind a lot of bad news out there. But if grace actually is abounding, it's creating good news stories. It's there. Right. We got to remember it, because it reminds us that evil does not have the last word in this world. It's God who has the last word. And that is something, as Catholic journalists, we keep in mind. And I think that's something that is important for people to understand when they read the news, is the world is not falling apart because the Lord still holds it in his hands. And he brings enormous good out of evil things, even more good than would have been possible in the first place.
I think, to Tertullian's words, blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church. Something that looks so devastating and dark actually becomes something that the church thrives on. Yes. That there's great news and great hope, even in those dark moments, such as Calvary.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And that's something that this Sister Miriam Therese, I mean, she suffered at the end of her life. She died at 26. You know, that's not necessarily good news, but she was a beautiful, wonderful saint and someone that we need to recognize for the great work that she did. So we, you know, that's what we're about, and that's my favorite part of the news, is to share this kind of thing.
And also, I know when I watch the news, sometimes I'll get frustrated, like, well, I say this position or this point isn't being made, or maybe this fundamental truth isn't being stated clearly. And that's a rich tradition we have as Christians, that our faith doesn't do violence to the truth, right? It protects reason, protects truth. So we should really be able to bring an objective standard to this.
That's a really good point, Father, because I think so often we do at the Register point out where perhaps secular media have taken a story about Pope Francis, for example, and have skewed it one way because of the eyes that they look at it with. You know, they're looking at it with a secular point of view. But we as Catholics, we who know the Church, can look at it with different eyes, and it's important for us to point that out and to put the right words in our readers' hands so that they can share it then with their friends. I mean, the whole point is engagement. Hopefully that the people who read our news are able to share it and are able to use that to set the record straight when the secular media don't see it in the fullest light. And we really are after the truth. We believe we have it, and we want to make that known. So, you know, a lot of times we do have to share what is going on in the world. So you do share what those who want so-called same-sex marriage, we report what they're saying about it. You know, we report their side of it. But then we're also going to report what those who are upholding the true marriage, what they say, and then in the middle of that we're going to add a clip of the catechism and what the catechism says. And that's how we try to frame the news, with this is what is being said, this is what the Church says, this is those who are fighting for this good news are saying now.
Right. I know, Peter, you talk about, you want to hopefully present an integrated vision that the Church has of man. Can you tell us about that? I know you did a story on fracking, or you're working on a story on fracking.
Well, yes, and I will tell you the beauty of being a Catholic journalist is that you're a storyteller. You don't have to exactly advocate for one side, because you're really just being an advocate for the truth. You're trying to present information to people so that they can understand and come to a judgment.
And let me just interrupt. That's the point I was trying to make, but you said it much better, that we're advocating telling the truth, which does not conflict with our faith at all, right? Our faith preserves, upholds all truth.
Exactly. That's why I don't feel there's a need to be an advocacy journalist. Just be an advocate for the truth. Don't put on blinders. Just tell a story. Say what, listen to people, hear what they're saying. Maybe they're bringing up points that were never considered. It helps bring together them in dialogue. But for this fracking story that I'm working on, it came from a personal encounter that I had in Ohio. I met a man on the street who was homeless, and he didn't ask me for money. I asked him how he was doing, and he said, well, if you know anybody that has some work that needs to be done, some handy jobs, I'd really like it, because I'm homeless, and my wife is 3 months pregnant, but I got nothing. And we had a conversation because I had dinner with him. I had nothing else to do. But the thing is that this is a town where there's a fracking boom. There's an economic boom going on. But what I learned, and I talked with others about this, is that these people were not getting hired. The local people who had lived in this town were not getting the jobs. They were like what Pope Francis was talking about in Evangelii Gaudium. They were being pushed to the side. And the man said that he had talked with 3 different fracking crews, oil and gas people, and they said they were only bringing in people. They were told to only hire people from their own states, where their companies were from. And that is something I found was true, is the hotels are filled with a lot of people from outside the state, outside this town, And one of the consequences is that the cost of living, the housing costs, are rising through the roof. This man was able to afford $450 a month. He got injured, which is why he lost his job. But his costs went from $450 a month to $950 a month. And in this little town, this is a little small town of Ohio where the average income is about $20,000 a year. The oil and gas people make $60,000 to $70,000. $950 is in the range of the DC area where I live. That is astonishing. And the social consequence of this is that this is a slice of people that's being left out, but they were part of the town. This was their community, and now they're being driven out of their homes. The nearest homeless shelter is 20 miles away. He was not able to go to that. And there's only a Salvation Army. So I said I would call up the bishop. I still will.
So you can present that story and hopefully affect a good change, right?
Well, and that is the key, is that when we present these stories, we're trying to remind people you have to pay attention to the news because you are your brother's keeper. This is about love of neighbor. You have to read the news and be informed so that you can know stories about this man I met. And you can realize maybe this is happening in my town. Maybe my town needs to do something differently. Maybe we need to say, if you're going to come in here, we want to make sure that you hire local people first. We don't want to see more homeless people, more people cut off from the economic benefits that this is bringing.
What would you tell young people statistically don't read or watch the news much? What would you tell them about the importance of being informed?
Well, I think it's unfortunate that a lot of young people don't read or watch the news. And I think in many ways it might be because the news might be too sad or depressing, or it's an attitude. The importance of it may not have been passed on from their parents. I just devoured the news and read it voraciously because it was something that my dad and I would talk a lot about. We would share it and talk back and forth about things going on. So I absolutely loved it. But I mean, the key thing is that young people, this is your world. And young people are wonderful because we're on fire to do something. We can be on fire to do something and change the world and go beyond ourselves. And reading the news allows you to understand that there's a bigger world out there beyond you, and that you can change, and you can make a difference for Christ, and a difference for Christ in another person. And I think that's the important thing to realize. It's very empowering to read the news.
I think it helps us too with the evangelization, engaging others, to be able to converse with about topics and things that are very relevant.
Absolutely.
Now, Jeanette, I also wanted to talk about your own personal story, because you left the farm there and went all the way to Rome, right, to be a journalist. Tell us about your education.
Well, I wasn't exactly from a farm. I'm from New Orleans. But
sounds better.
But no, you're right. I went to Franciscan University, so you were talking about St. Francis, a saint I know well from my college days. But I graduated from Franciscan and went to Rome to study communications. It wasn't a journalism degree, but it was in general communications, and I was there for 3 years. It's at the Pontifical University of the Holy Cross. Wonderful school.
And they're known, that's their specialty, right? One of their specialties?
It is one of their specialties. They're known for for canon law as well. But yeah, their communications degree has a number of American students in it, and I was one of the first women to graduate from that program. It was very informative. One of the most remarkable things about being in Rome is that you see the universal church. Right. So, in the U.S., we get used to what the church looks like here. We get used to the problems that we have in the church here. But there, you're studying with people from Africa, I had a bunch of classmates from Poland, from the Philippines, from India, and you learn about the church when you're with people from all of those continents, all of those countries. And that was a huge blessing for me. So I spent 3 years there. At the time, it was Pope John Paul II, now a saint. So I was very happy to see him canonized. And
you learned Italian?
I learned Italian. My classes were in Italian. I'm getting rusty, but I still can read it. So it was a tremendous time in my life.
Right. So I want to, let people know about that program.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's a possibility to do that, and we've been blessed here at the network. A lot of our interns, you might see them at Mass. Some African priests, some Indian priests, and oftentimes on weekends they'll come up and have a meal with us. And like you said, it really does broaden your horizons to hear.
Absolutely.
And Africa is really such a place of hope for us. The church is thriving.
Well, there are so many vocations. I mean, oftentimes we'll see African priests here, and so what once was a missionary territory is now becoming a missionary territory for the African priests. They're coming here, and they're working in our parishes, and they're bringing a lot of hope. But I had some wonderful experience with the African priests who were studying alongside of me. They are full of joy. That was a really remarkable thing about any African priest or person that I've met, is really, really full of joy. And
I don't know if we fully talked about, but you said the Register recently did a story on vocations.
That's right.
And what were some of the conclusions there that you all found?
So the story was in the September 21st through October 4th issue. And it was basically talking about how vocations often are generated from priests or from religious or from a neighbor inviting someone to consider a vocation or asking them if they've considered a vocation. It talks about a CARA study that was done that lists some of the reasons why people chose the religious life and what influenced them. And that was one of the #1 reasons, was somebody asked. Which is hugely important for us, so that we remember to ask young people about their vocation. Have you thought of this? The other thing that it said I found very interesting was that a lot of times when parents are not open to their son or daughter's vocation, it's often because they don't know enough about it. So they don't know enough about the religious order, or they don't know enough about the life of a priest to really fully embrace it. And once they find out more about it, they feel much more comfortable and often embrace it totally, wholeheartedly. I think that's an important thing to keep in mind during the Year for Consecrated Life that begins at the end of November. It's a year that we will be able to highlight the beauty of the consecrated life. And hopefully many parents will come to see that beauty and encourage it amongst their kids. Yeah,
that is an important finding. I think of Jesus in the gospel saying, come and see and discover, encounter yourself. And I know it was part of my story too. I know my parish priest asked me if I ever thought about being a priest, and I told him no way. But when I did spend time with priests, it was attractive and infectious. You could see a fullness there that can win the hearts of our young people. So we're going to take a short break. We'll be back in just a moment with the National Catholic Register, so don't go away. All right, welcome back. And Doug's got a burning question for us.
Yeah, I just need to know, do I invest in gold or silver? What is the right way to go? Gold? Okay, go with gold. That's all I needed to know. I'm good. All right.
I'm talking to all the insider traders.
Yeah, thanks for coming tonight, folks, and we'll be here all week. No, the question I have is, life on earth is warfare. It's, we're told this in Revelation that, woe to you, earth and sea, the devil's been cast down in a fury. We're in occupied territory here. Scripture talks about it, the church teaching talks about it, but the aspects of the spiritual battle are not always so clear and evident. And yet, things such as the Register, newspaper, Catholic radio, things of that nature, are very powerful weapons or instruments in this fight for souls.
Absolutely.
Can you talk to that, because you're in a position of kind of, you know, chief operator, running the whole picture here, the big show.
We want to be equipped.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, you know, why do we do this? We do what we do in order to equip you and everyone watching with the material they need to engage this battle. So if it's a battle over family and family life, then we want them to know what is attacking family life at the very core. We want them to know how detrimental contraception is to marriage. We want them to know everything that attacks marriage. You know, we don't want to single one little thing out. We want to talk about marriage in full, but you need to be equipped, right? You need to be equipped to go into that battle. So that's what it is at the heart of what we do, is finding what are those things in our society today that need to be covered in that way, that we need to shed light on from a news perspective, but also from a perspective of a feature. You know, this isn't maybe pressing news, how our engaged encounters or how is marriage prep. I mean, I don't think that there's much news coming out of that, but those are important things for people to know about, because we need it because of so much divorce in the world. So we're equipping Catholics.
And you know, and I find that too. You know, I travel and I give these battle ready rally talks. So I've been giving them all over the country for about a year now, and in really elevating the conversation of the spiritual warfare in especially one particular aspect, marriage. And when you ask so many people who are married, what is your #1 responsibility as a married individual above everything else on the planet? And there's so many good Catholics out there who just don't know. You know, my job is to get my spouse to heaven. My job is the woman on the other end of this ring for me, you know? Right. And the information I need to have, I need to be engrossed in, so that I understand that, because I'm only going to act upon what I really believe in and what I really have in my heart. And if I don't even know that it's out there and that it's that serious, I'm not going to act upon it. Right. And our divorce rate is 50–60%. In New Mexico, a priest said in his diocese, he told me a few years ago, 75% divorce rate. Yeah. If that doesn't tell us we're in battle, and we need this kind of information, we need this kind of in print and on radio, what the Register is doing, to give us, as you're saying, this is what's being said, this is what really should be said, and this is what the Church teaches us. This is the truth. Like you said, be an advocate for truth. Absolutely. And that's really what we need to fight this fight. You mentioned the radio, and the Register has a radio show. So I co-host that show along with Tom Price and Dan Burke, who is the Register's executive director. And radio is such a powerful tool. It's on Fridays. Fridays is when our show airs. And I hear from people in Louisiana all the time. They have a new EWTN station there. People I went to high school with, who I was in youth group with. So these are people my age or younger, and they are telling me they heard me on radio, and I haven't been in touch with them in years. And it's awesome to know that people are really listening to the radio. And I think radio is so tremendous because you can listen to it anywhere. I mean, you can listen on your computer, or you can listen. My brother it does contracting work, and you know, he'll be painting and he'll be listening to the radio. So it's really an important place for us to be. What I love about it is I podcast it. I podcast your show, and I could put it on my phone. Then I'm driving somewhere. I could listen to it when I want, or doing some kind of work. You know, so that is powerful. I think that is going to be a bigger and bigger wave of communication form of getting that message out there. Absolutely. Tell us too about how you offer a free trial for the Register. Oh, that's right. That's right. Thank you for mentioning that. It's important for your listeners, our viewers, because I'm thinking radio here, listeners. But on the Register's website, ncregister.com, there's a banner up at the top. It says 3 free issues, and this is a free trial, so you can go there, sign up, and you'll get 3 issues in the mail. And if you like it, then we'll send you an invoice, and you are welcome to get the other 20-something issues, 23 issues in the mail, and pay $49.95 for that, for the other issues. But the first 3 issues are absolutely free. You can enjoy it, get a feel for it. It's a nice
It's a nice broad sheet paper, and so it feels good, sturdy in your hands. And but what's so awesome about a newspaper, we forget about these things, you know, because we're looking at our mobile devices and that kind of thing. But this is our chance to actually package the news for you. You know, it has a theme about it.
Right.
This theme was vocations, for example. And once you have it, you can very, very easily pass it along to someone or leave it on your coffee table for your 15-year-old to pick it up and catch, you know, have their eyes on Bishop Sheen or on the priest on the Culture of Life section.
Right.
So.
I got a question. I want to stir things up a little bit here.
That's always great.
Now we have Mike Warsaw, the president of EWTN. He's the publisher.
That's right.
We have Dan Burke, the executive director. And then we have Jeanette here, who's the editor-in-chief.
Yes.
Right, so you're way, way up there. You're at a powerful position. And yet, in the media today, in our secular world, there are those who are spinning this war on women, that you're somehow against women if you're not pro-contraception and all that stuff. Talk to us about that from the viewpoint of a woman.
I think it's absurd. I mean, this is yes, I've got an important position here with the Register. I came from a position in an archdiocese that was very important. I was the communications director for the Archdiocese of Denver. I worked under Archbishop Chaput. I sat on his senior staff, and for many years I was the only woman in that room. I was 29 when I was hired for that position, so here's a 29-year-old woman hired to sit on the senior staff of a leading archbishop of the country. There's no such thing as a war on women in the Catholic Church.
But your pay, Jeanette, how did your pay compare to the men? That's what we need to know. How's the pay going? No, I'm just kidding. We don't want to.
They've taken care of me, I can say.
What do you think the women bring to it in situations like that, and like a very all-male dominated place?
I think it was a very important aspect, and if there were times where I might have been hesitant to speak up in a room full of men, Archbishop always called on me and said, I want to know what you think.
Right.
And oftentimes it was thinking of the perspective of how someone feels. You know, well, wait a minute, before we make that decision, let's think about how the parents at that school are going to take this, and how can we communicate to those parents. So that was an important part of my job, was to try to understand how to communicate things, especially since communication was my realm, compassionately. That was hugely important. Not to say that the men didn't have compassion, but a lot of times...
That's what I took from what you just said. So then the men in the room have no feelings.
That's not true. But at that moment, that's not what they were thinking about. At that moment, they were thinking about the decision at hand in a very objective manner. And that's very important, or else we might not get anything done. You know, but for me, it was to think about how that decision was going to play out. And what we could do to communicate it better.
And that's similar to a marriage, you know, raising children and such, is that you bring different aspects. The husband and wife bring different aspects, and they complement one another that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I can see where that works very well. Because a lot of men, we don't think about things a certain way. We're thinking, okay, we got to plow through this tree line, we got to get to that beach, and we're just going to blow everything up in the process. You know, and then my wife would come along and say, well, let's sand the edges down a bit here, Doug. Let's do this a little more gracefully. Okay, all right, that makes sense. So it is a good compliment to have
and it is important
perspective.
Yeah, it's very important in the media world today. I mean, I love on the show today hearing women's perspectives on things. Like we're, as a priest here, you know, we're preaching on all these different topics. I'm sitting at a table full of guys up at our friary, and it's great to hear a woman's perspective and take on it and insights. But Peter, let me get Peter one last point here. What would you tell an aspiring young writer out there? You're 28, you're working full-time in this business.
And you're married, right?
Yes, I am. I actually just got married a month ago. And
congratulations.
Well, I married the most wonderful woman in the world, and she makes me a much nicer person. And she challenges me.
Easy, pal.
I'm just going to say hello.
Married 24 years. Most wonderful in the world is my wife. Come on, what are you talking about?
We'll take this outside.
Now, did you cover your own wedding as a journalist?
Pardon me?
Did you cover your own wedding as a journalist?
No, not particularly.
Did you interview your wife or yourself?
Before the engagement, yes.
There you go. Nice job.
Well, it was about a 3-year interview.
A great engaged encounter. But anyway, go on.
I nearly forgot the question. But
what would you tell an aspiring young writer?
Well, I would tell an aspiring young writer, be passionate. If writing is what you love to do, it's hard. I don't really like writing itself, but I love having written. And it's a famous writer who said that. I can't remember.
Jack LaLanne said the same thing about exercise.
Well, but it's
so I can't stand exercise, but I like the benefits that come from it.
It's a beautiful thing, though, because it's a craft, and you have to be dedicated to it, and you have to love it. And if you're going to make it in this business, you have to be passionately committed to it. And try every day to be open. Try to learn new things. Try to look beyond the horizons that you have, because the beautiful thing about the church is that the horizons are so much bigger than you possibly imagine. And love it, and love the craft that you do. Sometimes it's very hard because I'm writing a story and it doesn't seem like it makes too many hits, but then I receive a note from somebody that says, "Thank you so much for writing this. It made a difference in my life, and I want to thank you." And it's out of the blue, and it's the most rewarding thing in the world. And so this is a vocation. It's a beautiful vocation, and it's a necessary vocation, to just love the church, try to look at the world from its perspective, and then share it with other people.
Right. Well, thank you so much for your work, and I feel better knowing you guys are out there with all your great formation.
On the battlefield, go!
And writing those stories. So
It's fun.
thank you.
Amen.
May our Heavenly Father shine His face upon you. May He give you His peace. And may Almighty God bless you, the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. We'll see you next week.